Cut content. It's always been a heavily discussed topic for nearly every single video game that is released nowadays. It sort of falls into a pattern of a couple of things. Developers may promise features that never make its way into the game. Developers have pretty rough ideas on content they want to add in, but they scrap it for some reason. Whether it's related to release deadlines or it's an idea that went sour and doesn't fit the current atmosphere of the game, it does get removed. What I've been noticing over the past few years is whether or not that cut content actually makes a return. We have slowly been seeing this become the norm. If the game doesn't have it at launch, it may return a couple months after release. The more promising and higher the expectations are for a video game release nowadays determines what kind of responses the communities will have to this cut content. Is there going to be an uproar when cut content is discovered? It puts players into a mindset of what could have been, and then they proceed to ask questions on that cut content returning. Over time, players go and put cut content on a pedestal, and then it becomes the end-all be-all solution. If X was in the game on launch, then it would indefinitely be better. It puts us into the world of what could have been. And like we said, as time goes on, more and more cut content is being discovered. And in the case of Dying Light 2, requests from the community to have certain things return are increasing rapidly. In today's video, we're going to go over roughly 10 plus different pieces of cut content from Dying Light 2. It ranges from a mission where you get your hand chopped off and you play the entire rest of the game with only one hand, to other things such as a performance test, hunting animals, and so much more. We previously did a video on ELYSIUM, which many believe to be Dying Light 2's third cut location, which you can check out right here. That video was edited by Sean, who's also editing this video, who's also locked in my basement right now. Sean cannot leave the basement until this video gets 1,000 likes. Many of you ask, how does cut content like this get discovered? The ones that we are discussing today were found by data miners and modders looking through the game files, breaching security, exposing all those goodies that Techland has hidden behind the secret wall. Techland needs to go ahead and brush up on their security, and there's no better way than staying secure than using Surfshark VPN. Surfshark VPN is my go-to VPN that I've been using for a little bit over than a year now at this point. I'm a big traveler, and I will never go into public and use public Wi-Fi without ensuring that my data is secure. A good friend of mine was actually just a victim of a cyber attack. His credentials, his logins, his banking information were all stolen just like that. And with Surfshark VPN, I can confidently say that all my data is safe, especially when using that public Wi-Fi at coffee shops, airports, and much more. You never know what could be waiting for you on the other end when you do connect, so why risk it? Mask yourself, get your IP hidden, use Surfshark. There's also another very interesting benefit that Surfshark has allowed me to take advantage of, and it's actually saving money online. And I know, sounds weird, let me explain. Simply by using a VPN and changing your location, you can sometimes get cheaper prices, especially on travel related purchases. I know that when I was booking my trip to Costa Rica, it was roughly $100 cheaper just when I change my location. And you never really know what you're missing out until you go and try it out. Like I said, Surfshark has been my go-to VPN, and by clicking the link down below in the description or the pinned comment, you can get an incredible discount and also up to 3 months free for this deal. So use the link down below in the description and keep yourself secure. Once again, thank you so much Surfshark for sponsoring this video, but now, let's begin. There are references and instances to a quest where one faction is trying to catch a thief. As the quest proceeds, Aiden can actually go and offer up his hand to be cut instead of the thief. After making this choice, Aiden now runs around doing parkour without a hand. He climbs up and down using only one rather than two. It's a particularly interesting choice that leads to a huge consequence. It also makes you wonder how in-depth the player choice system was at a certain point. Only having one hand is certainly going to make long-lasting changes to your gameplay. How you climb, how you use weapons, how you interact with our characters are just some examples. I can see this idea being scrapped because of how ambitious and impactful it may have been. Techland would basically have to retest everything in its entirety to ensure that it is working properly. And it's no secret, but we all know how goofy Techland games can get. It's their charm, to say the least. You might also have noticed this area right here. It's actually a scrapped location from a removed quest called Vampires. This location actually has a group living in an underground metro station near the PK Citadel, which was also removed. Moving on to emotes, there is actually a line of code in the files related to it. We have an emote raise hands, war cry, point, whistle, and shush. And if you played the game from launch to now, you do know that emotes are nowhere to be found. Emotes are a powerful form of player expression, especially in multiplayer co-op games. This is now added to the list of things missing from Dying Light 2. While the original did not have emotes, it did have other forms of communication for your co-op play, aka a text chat, which is not currently in Dying Light 2 at this time. Moving on, we have one-cut content feature that is being requested nearly every single day now at this point, and it's the Dying Light 2 finishers. These finishers were shown off in E3 and basically were brutal ways to kill off your opponents, taking your melee weapon, chopping up limbs, choking people out. They're just some examples of what Techland had in mind at one point. And in a world that is supposed to be brutal, realistic, it really is a shame that this didn't make its way into the final version of the game. It does nothing but overall improve the blood and gore, which when you compare it to the original, it is lacking in some areas. Luckily, however, modders are indeed banding together to restore Dying Light 2's old cut content, and in some ways it is indeed saving the game while Techline is busy elsewhere. These finishers can be added as a mod for PC players only at this time, but here's hoping that Techline listens and adds this back in. You will notice that it's a recurring theme that a lot of the stuff wrong with Dying Light 2 at the moment could just be fixed with a mod. It's a temporary solution that's only available to a small portion of the fan base, but it is a solution nonetheless. However, that is a conversation for another time. We're going to dive into that for our 7-month review. Next, we have Fury Mode and Cut Skills. You may have heard this before on some of your other favorite Dying Light 2 channels, but I've yet to cover it on here. Fury Mode would occur once your infection bar ran out, so the more your timer was ticking down, you would literally turn into an infected and have enhanced skills. You would have increased sprint, jump, damage, less fall damage, the ability to do a 360 shockwave. Fury at one point was an additional set of skills that you can unlock through inhibitors, and once you were fully upgraded, you had the option to toggle between the two. Do you want to be human or did you want to be infected? Now, when it comes to skills, there are a handful of skills that were cut from the game, and I'm going to quickly recap all of them for you. All of these skills that I'm about to tell you are indeed found on the Dying Light wiki. All credit goes to them. So let's go and try to recap it in like 60 seconds or less. Car landing allowed you to safely land on cars. Tree landing allowed you to safely land on trees. Swimming dash gave you a speed boost, and advanced swimming allowed for less stamina to be used. Parkour kick lets you kick while wall running. Running faster and skylight jumping are pretty self-explanatory. They also had a couple skills for weapon throw and weapon throw upgrade. Those were early on ideas. They also had a block push upgrade, and parry, which would allow the players to push enemies with the primary weapon while blocking. They also had skills related to upgrading one's dodging maneuvers were also in the game. There was also a shockwave upgrade to both the ground pound and jump attack. And the last 3 skills were related to using opportunity weapons faster, a quick reload, and a ricochet to all secondary item throws. And look at that, sort of 60 seconds, maybe 60 seconds exactly, I don't know, Sean, figure it out. Some of these skills, as you noticed, may be in the current version of the game. Car landing is just like a passive skill that's available to all players. It's not an unlockable. So level 1 Aiden can jump himself off of a rooftop and land on a car and not suffer any consequences, just like real life. Some of the other ones are a little upsetting to see gone. Weapon throw 1 and the weapon throw upgrade. Weapon throwing was something that you can do in the original, and it raises a lot of questions as to why it was removed. Techland probably just didn't want to deal with players picking up their weapons, throwing them to duplicate them. You know, we all did it. You took your weapon, you threw it down, next thing you know, you have another one. But speaking of weapons, there were also some additional weapons discovered in the game files that are currently not available. One of the big ones that I found really interesting was the Nunchunks, and I'm hoping that it makes a return in a future DLC. Because to me, honestly, I think having absurd and fun weapons like this will just make Dying Light 2 more compelling. And of course, in a very recent video, we discussed the Scorpio. As you know, a lot of people are pushing for firearms and guns to be in this game. I personally don't think it needs firearms, but I would love to see an arsenal of makeshift weapons available, especially weapons like the Scorpio. Weapons to show the world adapting to changes but goes beyond the typical bows and crossbows. That is a must right there. Timon also mentioned a slingshot, and honestly, I kind of want a slingshot. Timon, make it happen. And there's also shields, but this one is most likely going to make a return in the first DLC. As we know, first DLC has been leaked, and it's expected to be a gladiator-themed story DLC. So shields making a return for that would be a perfect fit. Moving on, another neat feature that was in the game at one point was a performance test. The ability to stress test your PC and see what graphics quality and FPS you're able to get would have been awesome. It's a common feature that is in most modern gaming nowadays, and well, Cut! They also had personal stats available to you at one point. It would tell you your total play time, how many times you died, items you crafted, chases you invaded, infected killed, and so much more. Moving on to our last two big pieces of cut content, we have the Nomads and one final quest called Archers. So the Nomads were a group of individuals that isolated themselves by choice. They had a major role during the story. At one point, there are many dialogue files that show that the Nomads actually raised Lawan until Frank took her in. The Nomads were great people, but as you know, they ultimately did not make their way into the world of Dying Light 2. There was a cut quest called the Blood Diamonds, where Aiden is tricked into killing a group of Nomads, where he also learns that the crystals are produced by human bodies. It's actually a really twist-heavy quest that may return in the future. Bub was the one who discovered all of this content, and he made an amazing video detailing the entire thing from start to finish, which you can find down below in the description. It's unclear how big of a role the Nomads were going to have. Were they going to be faction size like the Peacekeepers or the Survivors? That we don't know. Would they have been a wildcard faction or something similar to the Couriers Guild? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see if it does come to fruition. But finally, we have the Archers quest. Now, this quest was data mined by Alexander Whittaker that further goes in depth about the Nomads and other various things about the black market in Dying Light 2. The quest is like 50 plus pages long, so I'm going to do my best to go and summarize this in about 2 minutes or less. The quest starts out with Lawan discussing what kind of people the Nomads were. The best way to get to know them is to do work for work. You give them a job, they'll give you something to do. Aiden is currently looking for military equipment in this particular quest, and once he makes his way to Nomad territory, they are currently on guard for trespassers for their soon-to-be king that won't let Aiden in to do business unless he offers up a fitting deal for the king. Django is also the king's brother. Django is aware of Aiden and discusses how Aiden is interfering with their lives because of a nearby water tower that he gave to either the Survivors or the Peacekeeper. The dialogue would change depending on your choices that you made. After a bit of back and forth dialogue, the guard lets Aiden talk to King Sabin, who they will work out a deal together in exchange for the equipment. King talks about how they have a tradition called the Great Race, and he wants Aiden to participate on his behalf and beat his brother Django. Aiden agrees, wears the king's colors to show that he is racing on his behalf, and he goes to the torment line. Dialogue occurs between the race host and Aiden, discussing how the best runners used to be crystal divers, but now they were murdered for some reason. This is actually a reference back to another cut quest called Blood Diamonds, where Aiden accidentally murders a group of Nomads. Aiden, of course, races, he wins, he then goes to the king's room, where he is told if he wins the finale, he is going to be the captain of the guard. But then drama starts to ensue when they see Sabin with Django's ex-fiancée, Miriam, together in the room kissing. Afterwards, they get ready for tomorrow's race, and then Aiden wins. He returns to the king's quarter to find the king, Lawan, Django, and Carmen, the king's mother, but then they also realize that Miriam is now missing. It's also worth mentioning that Carmen is the current queen since the last king died. This is why there's such tension between the two brothers. They believe that she has been kidnapped, and they ask Aiden for his help, and after a bit of searching, he does find her hiding. Miriam decided to run away and not go back to the Nomads as the brothers were abusive to her. Aiden then has to make a choice to let her go or convince her to come back. If she comes back, the King Sabin is found dead. The people believe that he killed himself, or that's what Django's telling people at least. They ask Aiden to then investigate, and if he does so, he'll be rewarded with the GRE equipment that he was looking for earlier. After searching, all the evidence points towards Django killing him, but it's discovered that it was actually his mother Carmen that did so. Then afterwards, Aiden is rewarded with downloading the codes, Django becomes king, and then all is good to go. What I find really interesting is actually the other choice, where Miriam doesn't return. Django is the one that's killed, but this time the quest plays out a little bit differently. Sabin is the one who murders Django because of anger and jealousy. The people find out, and the angry mob of Nomads decide to kill Sabin and leaving the Arch leaderless. And then from this point on, nobody rules the Arch, and then a black market emerges. This would allow for trading of contraband items, but we actually never got to see this in the main story, so it's unclear what the final function of this quest was going to be. There is an option to have the mob kill Carmen instead, But that's not interesting. We want to talk about the black market. The contraband items on the black market could have been an incredible idea to explore. The gadgets, the items that could have been sold on this market may have been wild and unique and unlike anything that we currently have. Some of these items could have been renegade specific items. What this does also show is how big of a role the Nomads had at one point during the story. It was a cut faction that never made its way into Dying Light 2. Their existence gone completely, snapped out of reality. Thanos would be proud. Maybe they will come in a future DLC. One of my favorite things that I love from this quest is that depending on your choices, an entire black market could emerge. This would have opened the door for so many more opportunities later down the road. Fingers crossed it comes in a DLC. We'll have to wait and see, friends. But that is everything from this video. If you want to see more content from me, click on these videos right here, and I'll see you later. Bye-bye.